Good morning. My name is Wouter Vandenbussche. I'm leading the cybersecurity services team within Proximus Next, and I'm very glad to be on stage today with Oliver Keizers. He's the area vice president at Semperis, and Semperis is one of our identity and access management partners. Very curious what you think about this session this morning. Like many of you, I woke up this morning and I had already had many interactions with my digital identities. I scrolled through my personalized news this morning. I gave kudos to my Strava buddies that were able to go on a run yesterday. And I read my WhatsApp messages. Got in my car, took my personalized key, my Google account got loaded, drove me to Mechelen. I took out my phone again, scanned QR code, got here, got my speaker's badge, and here I am. All these interactions with your digital identity really make me think about what does it mean? 10 years ago, a digital identity was kind of an incarnation of your physical identity. While nowadays, I often have the feeling it's the other way around, that our physical identities are kind of an incarnation of our digital ones. I know, it's a bit early for a philosophical debate about identities, but it shows how important that digital identity is. Getting access to data, to applications, doing transactions with that digital identity, securing that is key. And over the years, the architecture for security has changed drastically. We've seen zero trust really gaining ground into the architecture of cybersecurity. It's really driven from the fact that the global perimeter approach is just obsolete. Users, applications, and data are outside that perimeter nowadays. And several principles from that zero trust architecture are very key in all of the executions. It's about applying least privilege, about inspection of the security system, about never trusting, always verifying, but also about bringing security controls closer to the microparameters of those assets, closer to the identities, closer to the data, closer to the apps. And over the years, concepts like an identity parameter have emerged to secure that identity. And more lately, Gartner coined terms like X security posture management, like ASPM and DSPM, and X detection and response to NDR, EDR, and ITDR nowadays, to on one hand, manage the risk of those profiles, of those assets, and on the other hand, check which cyber incidents occur on those assets, the detection and response case. If you question our customers on digital identity and how they implement it in organizations, we get quite a lot of answers. But we typically see 4 key main sub-programs coming back at our customers. The first program, probably the most straightforward one, is often not implemented correctly, is the authentication one. It's all about granting user access, getting them authenticated, multi-factor authentication, passwords, these type of things. It's still a very valid program within many companies. The second sub-program we distinguish is all about access management. During real time, granting access to a user, to an object, to an application, enforcing the right. And this is becoming more and more a real-time activity that's enforced at every transaction the user or the application is doing. The third program we distinguish at our customers is identity management. It's about lifecycle of objects, about the attributes, about the roles, the permissions, and making sure that those attributes are ready in all of the systems where it needs to be. And the fourth program is about privileged accounts, your most sensitive accounts for your administrators or your business users. And when you run such a program, it's programmatic in nature. You have to look at the long-term objectives of such programs, but also has to be pragmatic. The key in identity is to get adoption with your program, to get the programs you run, the technical controls you put in place, get adopted by the different teams. And at the center of this program are the identities. The human identities on one hand, looking at the employees, your customers, your contractors, your partners, but also the non-human users. Think about all the things you have in your company, the machines, the bots, and those identities are typically stored within the directory, together with all of its attributes, its credentials, permissions. And needless to say, that directory is a primary target for many hackers. They try to escalate in your environment, go and hit that directory, and the moment they get this, they have the keys to your kingdom. They can do whatever they want. And we see that many companies, while they are aware that this is a very key asset, do not have the proper controls in place. That's why I've invited Semperis today to the stage, because they really focus on securing your Active Directory, making sure backup and restore is in place and security is right. So without further ado, I give the floor to Oliver, who will run you through what Semperis is all about. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you, Wouter. Well, it's not so much what Semperis is all about, but it's really about Active Directory, Entra ID, to an extent also Okta, the identity stores that you tend to use a lot. I keep calling this the bragging slide, but it's actually not so important on who we are and what we do. What is a little more important is the fact that when you look at these organizations, it doesn't really matter whether you have a flu and you need to sneeze your nose with a tissue that comes from Essity, you have had your coffee that comes from Starbucks. You've been dating on Tinder probably, and you found a loved one where at Cartier you wanted to buy them something. These are all customers, and the story behind it is there is no typical customer, because you all are typical customers. You all have Active Directory. And for all of you, Active Directory is something that has been around for a long, long time. In some cases, it has been around for almost 25 years. AD was introduced by Microsoft in the year 1999 with the Server 2000. That is a long time ago. And lots of things have happened, but not enough since then. The biggest challenge right now is not so much that Active Directory is a system that has been around for a long time. The bigger challenge is it's a system that you can configure. Well, you need to configure it. But when you look at that number, 88%, and that comes from the Microsoft Digital Defense Report, 88% of customers that Microsoft was involved in that had breaches, had insecure AD configurations. No, we're not talking about patching. We're talking about configurations. We're talking about a click that was done 10 years ago. Perfectly kosher 10 years ago, no problem whatsoever. It was required for this application. Otherwise it wouldn't work, or whatever the reason was. That setting today is a big open door. It is a security threat. Are you aware of that? If not, welcome, you're part of the 88%. Highly likely you are part of the 88%. That is just daily reality. And the problem goes a little further when you look at how Microsoft has been treating Active Directory over the past years. If you leave Server 2025 outside, the last real security relevant updates to Microsoft's AD were done with Server 2016. That's a friendly 8 years ago. 2019, Microsoft, in their endless wisdom, has said, you know what? In the future, the ruling identity store is going to be Azure AD, today known as Entra ID. So there is not a lot happening on the Microsoft side either to help you with Active Directory. And who of you is able to phase Active Directory out just like that? It's almost impossible. I'm doing this for 4 years now, and 4 years ago, a colleague and I have been laughing about the fact that AD is probably still going to be around when we retire. I'm 55, so I still have 12 years, and I'll bet you it's going to take a lot longer than those 12 years for AD to disappear. It's easy to do authentication from the cloud. It is not so easy to take all your applications that use Kerberos, that even use NTLM or whatever, and modernize all of them. Good luck, have fun. It's going to take a while. So for reality's sake, AD is going to stay for a long, long time still. Why is AD so interesting? This comes from the other side of the world. This is the CERT of the government of New Zealand. It's just another description of what an attacker basically does. And if you have not taken care of that initial access, leave this session, go talk to someone that sells you something towards endpoint security. This is the first thing that you need to do. Full stop. But if you have your endpoint security properly controlled, then the next thing that an attacker is going to do is he or she is going to look at lateral movement and at privilege escalation. That is where we come into play. That is where Active Directory comes into play. You need to make sure that it's as difficult and as hard as possible for an attacker to actually get there. And the other thing that's pretty important is backup destruction. You've all heard of ransomware cases where just everything was, well, encrypted, deleted, destroyed, gone. And I can tell you a story later if we have time from a customer that actually had exactly that case. So this is today's reality. And it's important to also look at the fact that you may say, oh, well, yeah, it's not that much of a problem because it's taking a while and I have this very good SOC and I have my SIEM and I have outsourced everything and so on and so on. Can you react in 19 hours? 19 hours is, this is Bumblebee. Initial access is time 0. 19 hours later, privilege escalation, that basically is domain dominance. This is the key to the kingdom in 19 hours. And if you say, I can defend, I can detect, and I can kick the attacker out in 19 hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, then you're free to leave because then you're doing a superb job. Well, maybe then you can also fly because that's just like that. That's impossible almost. So there is always a chance for an attacker to get through. And to give you an even bigger insight into why this is so important, have you heard of the 5 Eyes? I need to admit I haven't before they launched this report. The 5 Eyes is the intelligence community of the Anglo-Saxon states. New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, Canada, and the United States. Wait, it's the guys like NSA, CIA, GCHQ, and so on and so on. They really have big problems that they're taking care of. And they have issued a report that says AD is your biggest problem. That, to me, is stunning. They look at, I don't know, atomic weapons control and whatever, and they take care of Active Directory. There's a few things, and I'm happy to share the link to the report with you, because it's really very extensive. There's a few things from there, and probably the most important thing is this is not optional, it is essential. So when the CIA tells you this is essential, you're probably aware of the fact that there may be something behind it. Also, Gartner says top trend, but one more important thing, or from my point of view, more relevant thing is this quote. This Gartner analyst, Nick Simpson, says, you have to have a useful backup system. You all have backups. I'm very sure you all have backups. Have you also restored everything that you're backing up on a regular basis? Are you testing and trying that? Because that is the process to restore Active Directory. Shall we walk through it? Line by line? Probably not. Over here, number 4. That's the last thing that you do with your traditional backup system. You restore one domain controller, you restore sysvol of that domain controller. That is it. All the rest. And trust me, this is pretty cumbersome. There's a lot of challenges in terms of, oh wait, I just mistyped something. Oh, and there's that guy behind me that says, faster! If you are under attack and you have to resurrect Active Directory, and this is the first time you see this, go find a new job. It's much easier than doing this. And that's the problem. A useful backup system allows you to do all of that and even several times. Because if you believe that, oh wait, we've been ransomed, we're just going to restore Active Directory and magically the world continues just like it did before, continue sleeping. That's not the reality. And I'll give you some background to it from a real world case. This is actually the only product slide, but you need to know the products that we're selling to understand what the following story is about. There's one thing that I urge you to do, and Gerd, can you get up for a second? This is Gerd Huben. He has something for you, just a little QR code. There's a free product called Purple Knight. And let me repeat that, it is free. It doesn't cost you anything. Purple Knight scans Active Directory for more than 150 of those configuration flaws that I was talking about earlier. Again, it doesn't cost you anything. It produces a very nice PDF report. The first 2 pages are even management enabled. There's yellow and green and red and percentage values and all of those. But then all the other 70-something pages, they have painful details. They have all the information. This is the setting, that setting is problematic. This is what you need to do to fix it. These are the consequences if you don't. And I'm deliberately repeating myself, it doesn't cost you anything. The other thing is Directory Services Protector, that is auditing. Scanning, so to speak, Active Directory for those vulnerabilities and configurations, but then continuous auditing of all changes that take place. It may be changes to configurations, it may be changes to attributes or objects, or DNS settings, or anything that is AD related, and the ability to undo that on the fly. That's going to become important in a moment. And then lastly, the useful backup system. ADFR, well, the name suggests it, Active Directory Forest Recovery does exactly that. It helps you to recover an AD forest very, very quickly and very, very easily. Literally 6 clicks. So that's the background knowledge that you need to understand this. It looks a little convoluted, but I'll walk you through it. Modern fairy tales do no longer start with once upon a time. They start with, it was Friday afternoon and the phone rang. Because that is when attackers typically act. In this case, it was Friday afternoon, about 1.5 years ago. The phone rang and one of our incident response partners called us and said, Houston, we have a problem. There is a customer in the Middle East, it's a telco. We don't know a lot at this moment in time, but we know that there's something weird going on and we believe they have been breached. As a matter of fact, the domain controllers were behaving a little awkward, a little weirdly. Nobody knew what really happened, so AD was still there. That's the good news. But what do? Well, you create a security net. Creating a security net, that's where this product ADFR comes into play, means taking a copy of the production Active Directory and bringing that into an isolated network. That's the first thing that an incident responder should always do. Grab your crown jewels and put them somewhere safe. And then, let's have a look at what's actually happening. This is DSP. I said it does audit all changes in Active Directory. It audits the configurations, it audits the changes, and we were looking at, now my tone, can you still hear me? Okay, because my microphone, or actually my monitor just died. So we were looking in real time, basically, at the actions of the attackers. And I'll give you a little more detail, which we found out during the time. 4 different attackers. 4 different state-sponsored attackers. Russia for sure, China for sure, Iran, and highly likely the United States of America. They were all basically playing ping pong on the domain controllers of that telco. Telco, critical national infrastructure, Middle East, ooh, very difficult environment. So there was absolutely no chance to A, shut the network down and isolate the production network, because that would have meant the telephony system would no longer work, and I guess Proximus has an opinion on that. And at the same time, they were literally, every time we were shutting one thing down, they were popping up somewhere else. So a decision had to be made. And I'll inject a little advertisement again. Download Purple Knight. Have I said that already? Please, it's in your own interest. So a decision had to be taken. What are we doing? There's no chance we can kick them out in production. Let's move over to isolation. Let's harden Active Directory. Have you done a tiering concept for Active Directory already? When I ask customers, they say, yeah, some say yes, some say no. Those that say yes say, yeah, it's going to take us about 2 years. This entire hardening exercise was 3 days. That is a lot of work, a lot of impossible things, and actually that is the beauty of a ransomware case, or actually of a breach, because all of a sudden you can do things that otherwise you could have never done because someone would have said, no, I need this, you can't do that. So I'm not saying get a breach to get your processes faster, but there is an advantage to it. So we hardened Active Directory, and on the last day, this entire gray line in the middle is actually days. So on day 5, the moment of truth came. We had to shut down all production domain controllers, literally pull the plug of all domain controllers and move the hardened Active Directory into production. Total outage of that customer, about half an hour. That is it. This is literally like having a car on the highway, driving at 150 kilometers per hour, while you're changing the tires and servicing the engine. That's almost impossible. But you can do it. It is possible. And that is what you need to keep in mind when you start thinking of Active Directory. Time is of essence, absolutely. The first thing that you need to resurrect after an attack, well, is the network itself. You need some form of underlying hardware. The next thing is your identity store, because all your other systems are going to authenticate against that identity store, and that is Active Directory. If you take 5 days, 10 days, whatever, because you've never tested and trained it, all the others are sitting there twiddling thumbs, and most likely your management is going to sit in your back and say, faster, which is not a very good position to be in. And I have yet to see a lot of customers that are on a regular basis testing Active Directory reconstruction. It's been there for such a long time. It's always worked, so why should I? It's like air, power, water, Active Directory. So please, if you take something home, take that idea home. You have to test it at some point. So what are the things that you should be doing? It is a matter of actually a set of different areas. You may call it pre-attack or prevent or whatever. It's the phase where you're still in times of peace, so to speak, though you're constantly under attack technically. Find those configuration weaknesses. Find those indicators of exposure and those indicators of compromise. Work with them. It is, excuse my French, a shitload of work. It's gonna take a while, but it's better to know where you have defects than have the attacker know where you have defects and then use them. So that is of utmost importance. The next thing, obviously, during the attack, which really is every day, understand what is happening. If you rely on log files, if you rely on your SOC or SIEM, or if you rely, Wouter, sorry, on your outsourced provider, make sure that they see everything and not only a few things. Their attack path or attack principles, like DC Shadow, for example, you cannot see a DC Shadow attack in a log file. But that is one of the most used attack vectors against Active Directory. So you have to have something that allows you to see such. And then obviously, it's good to see that something happens, but if you can't react to it, it's pretty useless. You need to be in a position to undo changes the moment they happen. Because otherwise, how would you defend the 19 hours? And in this case, DSP scans, audits, writes into a database, and you can undo immediately. And then lastly, put yourself in a position where you can restore, recover an entire Active Directory to a trustworthy state. I said time is of essence. Time is important. What is actually more important is trust. Can I trust my Active Directory? Is it actually my Active Directory? Or does it still belong to the attacker because he has some backdoors in there? You need to make sure that it becomes your Active Directory again. There's a few things you can prepare, you should prepare. A security assessment. No, this is not pen testing. A security assessment basically means take Active Directory, break it open, take a comb and find any and everything. We offer that together with Proximus as a service. It takes a lot of effort actually, it's 25 man days, but it will give you a total and complete understanding of the state of security and a lot of recommendations what to do and what not to do. And this wonderful guy over there, George, he is actually one of our incident responders, and he will help you with such. And he lives in Amsterdam, so not too far away from here either. Threat mitigation and DR planning is another thing. Make sure you are prepared for the fact that it will happen sometime. We're no longer in the times of, yeah, I'm too small, I'm too this, I'm too that, nothing's going to happen to me. The question is when it will happen. Are you prepared for that? And then lastly, find someone that can help you with incident response. If it's Wouter, that's perfectly fine. He has my phone number. But if it's someone else, that's also fine as long as you are prepared. And that is really the most important thing. Be prepared.
Proximus next. Think possible.